Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be back with you again on another episode of Shoney Talks Lifestyle. And I know you guys are excited because we have a lot of things to talk about. And today I have a really special, amazing guest. Her name is Sarah, and she was born and raised in a small town in Iowa. And she graduated actually from the same college that I did, Oral Roberts University. Shout out to you guys. And she's two classes away from her master's at Colorado Christian University. Learning culture, new experiences, and loving people is her passion. So you'll definitely hear a lot about that as we talk. And she's traveled over 30 countries, you guys, as a result. So it's amazing. She's been married for 11 years to a brilliant and kind man. And they have 5 bright and beautiful children, thank God. Now, her family of 7 has had the opportunity to live in 6 countries and 22 cities. And during that time, they have witnessed and experienced the mighty hand of God everywhere they've went and have brought that message of hope and love found in his son Jesus to the world. So without further ado, Sarah. Hey, girl.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Could you greet our viewers really quick?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, it's so good to see y'all, although I can't really see you guys, but thank you for joining us. I know Shoney Talks Lifestyle is an amazing resource for a lot of us to be tuned into and to be paying attention and listening to. I know I feel honored that I get an opportunity to share the things that God has shown me in my short little life here. And so I hope that you guys gain some wisdom and insight as you're listening.
Definitely. So tell us about this. What led your family to travel like over 6 countries and all of that?
Yeah.
How is it?
Yeah, my husband played basketball in college, and that's where we first met. And then afterwards, we decided to continue to keep on playing, and so we were able to go overseas and playing in different countries, from Germany to Spain to Japan, Russia, all over the place, to France. Some of our children were born there, others were just conceived there, and in that process, we were able to learn a lot of languages, learn about the Christian church worldwide and other religions and cultures that we were encountering. And now we're back in America. We've retired from playing ball professionally, and now we live here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the great land of the Midwest. And yeah, I'm kind of getting acclimated to the American culture now. So that's been an interesting transition. But yeah, that's why we've been overseas for the last 10 years, but now we're back on stateside with y'all.
I love it. Girl, you are goals anyway. So tell us the difference as far as getting acclimated to America versus overseas.
Sure. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just lifestyle. I will be fortunate if I've looked in the mirror and done something with my life, as in I'm not a very physically focused person, I guess. And I've noticed since I've been here, it's a bit different as far as even family goals. I mean, conversations are on not even so obviously, but you can just feel the undercurrent of cars, homes, sizes, just prosperity physically. Whereas overseas, I don't remember even having a lot of conversations like that. A lot of the homes were assumed that we would all be in flats. It's like apartments. Mm-hmm. Even well-off people that were very fortunate, they would just be in a nicer flat, but it's not like they owned tons of property or had huge lands, or the mentality just wasn't that. I know that that's not an issue in America, but I think it can maybe be a little bit of a distraction, focused on what we don't have or how we can upgrade and get better, or the latest phone or the latest whatever. It's just very consuming. I have found my own self, I'm not much of a shopper. I like books, as you can see, and anything with teaching materials, academics, sure, I'll stockpile probably, maybe, I don't know. But when it comes to like clothes and shoes, not so much. But even me being here, there's like so many apps now, Facebook Marketplace, just a bunch of stuff. I find myself getting on the hamster wheel, and I'm like, wow, this is how someone who already has a shopping disposition can get so caught up, because the Word of God says greed it has an endless appetite, and it just wants more. And I can feel that more here, and I feel like I've even been on the hamster wheel with it, and practicing getting off of it, because ultimately I feel like it's not really based on the happiness that people are seeking, because you'll never be satisfied. So that's the biggest.
Right.
difference I noticed. There is a friendliness. Guards are down in a positive and maybe a negative way. I think that people are transparent a lot more quickly here. I have theories on all that, but we don't need to get into that. But we're a lot more maybe vulnerable here, where we're open to conversations. We go deeper, quicker. We share personal information that some would say are sacred or private or personal a lot faster. Whereas in France or Russia, maybe not as much in Spain, but in other countries for sure more. Japan, a lot more guarded. So it takes a while to kind of get into the tribe or the heart of someone before they'd even come close to sharing what an American probably would share within 30 minutes if they felt like you're really listening. So, for better, for worse, that's another difference. And then of course, diet's dramatically different, fast and furious here. Overseas, not so much.
Okay. So I want to delve into two of those things that you mentioned. So because you're raising children and there's things you like and don't like in the different places that you've been exposed, what are some things that you don't like? I'm thinking in America, as far as what you're instilling in your children, as far as what you want them to grasp onto. What do you like that you want them to grasp, and what don't you like you don't want them to grasp, as far as America?
Sure. I like to do negative first. I find that people like the opposite, but I guess since you asked me, I'll do negative first because then we can end on a positive note. Negative for me is just how fast everything is. I mean, it's almost expected that it's just, I don't think people even realize it, but everyone's like 0 to 100 all day to like probably 9 p.m. with their children. And every mama I talk to seems to be on a similar schedule, even if they're homeschooling. It's just such a demand of being a professional mama and a homeschool mom, or whatever the case might be, but that we're all like all gears, full alert. I don't know. It's very intense here. And I don't know if it's because we all have cars and we're driving. I'm still trying to figure that piece out, but I don't prefer how there's not a lot of time to breathe. My children probably don't notice it, but I feel the pressure cerebrally. So then I think it manifests, unfortunately, as I'm learning how to emotionally manage my own self with impatience or, okay, guys, we have to go. I even hear myself saying that. And then I think they don't get why we're rushing, though. And if I practice this long enough, it will make them anxious and emotionally tangled. And I don't want that. So I have to find myself saying, okay, we should get rolling, kids. But in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like, from here to here to here. And it's so busy. There's so many activities and so many opportunities, and which is my issue. I can just pick and choose and then focus and be content. But I'm just still getting used to it. Versus overseas, there's activities, but there's less of a mandate or a culture of it. I don't know how to describe it, of busyness. So it's just not as normal. And then food-wise, it's normal for them to think, well, let's just go out to eat. Let's just go through the drive-thru. Let's just do this. Whereas overseas, there's only a couple of American, of course, chain restaurants like KFC is usually everywhere, and then McDonald's, and sometimes Pizza Hut. But it's like in a mall far away, not really by the community. So you'd have to travel to get there. And then by the time you do, you realize how kind of gross the food is anyways, because you're so used to cooking at home. It's not really a treat, if that makes sense. Whereas here, it's just so common and normal because we're so busy that we have to do this. And anyways, so I don't prefer that. What I do love about America, being a woman of faith and a woman who fears God and a family that fears the Lord, is how accessible it is in Oklahoma. Almost everyone here is a Christian. Even in secular restaurants or stores, they are playing Christian music, and radio stations, which isn't normal. I think those franchises, the same ones, could get in trouble on the East Coast or West Coast probably. But there's such a normalcy of Christians here that I feel like it's been a really good bubble, because I went from doing my island of holiness overseas, is what I called it, where it just was us. So all they knew was just us as believers, to now Oklahoma, where it's for sure the buckle of the Bible Belt. And so it's been a lot of confirmation of, see, this is what we do as believers. We're bold, we're brave, we serve the homeless. There's so much opportunity to go. I mean, we have relationships with people under the bridge about 2 minutes away that even just yesterday we were able to serve and love on. And so I really love how much of a backbone I feel like we have here spiritually, and how normal being a Christian seems here, because obviously that's not the case worldwide. So it's a really good bubble for them to grow and strengthen before they get shot out, down the road.
Definitely. So, and we'll get to the diet piece, because I definitely want to touch that. But since you mentioned some of the things you mentioned, are any of your children at the age, or have they experienced anything with race because them being different races. I'm not for sure out in Oklahoma. Is it, would you say it's diverse? When I was there, it wasn't as much diverse. I would say the university I went to was a little bit diverse, but it wasn't as diverse when I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been your experience with children?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if it's, I guess we can always say it's God's grace, and it could be their mindset, where I have had friends, for an example, where we'll go to London. This is a real example with two of my cousins, and they were like, oh my goodness, this trip was amazing. Whenever I assumed that people would be snooty, blah, whatever. And I think that expectation led to that experience because they're looking for it, then they found it. Whereas anyone that traveled with me, I started realizing the common pattern of feedback. It was so refreshing. Everyone was so nice. Everything fell into place. And I thought, I have such a loud, commanding personality. I generally happen to be the leader of the pack, not meaning to, but I've just traveled so much. And then when I hear such consistent feedback, I finally realized the only variable that's not changing is myself, but it's not me. It's just biblical concepts and principles, believing that which is as though it were. If someone that day, then I smile a little bit brighter. I don't internalize their issue as mine. So it could be because they're my children and that same spirit's on them. But we've not encountered anything negative in, again, the 6 countries and 21 cities, a little bit. No one has ever, not in Tulsa, it's actually really diverse. I think you'd be shocked if you came back. At least I don't think I'm shocked, because it just seems like everywhere else we've lived. Tons of Asians, tons of Africans, quite a few Indians, and lots of Hispanic people, and there's Caucasians too. But there's everyone. There's a large mixture because of the oil and gas industry. You have a lot of those sorts of people getting pulled in, and then Rhema and Oral Roberts and just all of the faith ministries here, and a lot of international crowds.
Okay, so since that hasn't been,
attend has over nations that attend there, so maybe it's my own community, but going to your Victory, there's 70 plus. You can,
right. So you kind of raise your children around a diverse community, so it's not really a particular issue. I have a different type of background. So when I was growing up until about 6th grade, I was raised in an all Black school. Because of the area that I was in. It was a Christian school, and in our school was one Caucasian girl. And that was the atmosphere. Yeah, that was, I know, right? I was like, how did she feel? But that was the one thing that we had growing up. So around 7th grade and up, all the other Christian schools that my parents thought would be good for me, most of those were predominantly Caucasian. So my parents, because they wanted the morals piece, I've never really had the diversity piece throughout my life. I've had exposure to different types of cultures, but I did experience racism, but it did not come from Caucasians. Actually, came from my own race. I know, sounds weird, right? But it was from my own race. So I guess everybody has different. Not just even the light skin, dark skin, but more of the groups. I was one of those, like, not a nerdy kid, but I was very, I excelled in everything. And not that other kids didn't excel in everything, but it caused jealousy amongst people who are, were of my same race. And because of that, and also I am attractive too. So that probably played a role. She's smart. She's attractive. Sometimes it could come across as, oh, you think you're better, but it's not. You're just doing great. And the things that you want to be an example in the world. And so you're just doing great in those things. And sometimes that's what I happen to experience. But I was always open to many cultures of having relationships, even within my own culture, and not letting that experience kind of just, taint me from experiencing the beautifulness of other people. So moving on to that. So I don't know if you and your husband have different experiences, as far as I know what kids see and what adults see sometimes are different.
Sure.
Yeah. Because adults could be picky sometimes, like pick this, pick that, pick that. Kids are like, it's just everything. Like they don't, they're not like that. Yeah, so it could be different experiences. But moving forward, talking about the pickiness of kids and pickiness of adults, let's talk about this diet. Because everybody in America, I don't care where you're raised or what you have, everybody has some kind of picky eater in their household. But tell me your
Sure.
ideology. We were talking a little bit about this. How have you raised your family with concerns to diet holistically?
Mhm. Mm. One thing I think that helps set us off on the right foot from the get-go is try to eat a diversity of foods when I'm pregnant. Even if I don't prefer the spice combination or whatever it is, I get very excited because I know the child in me has a blank canvas on her. I mean, her genes or his genes do have preferences. We know that from science. We also know from science that you can get your taste buds acclimated to anything if you keep on re-exposing. And that's why mamas who eat curry and they're breastfeeding or they're eating it, the baby already has a taste for it by the time it comes out. So I get very excited at this opportunity to make this child very open already to to have a wide range of a palate, if you will. So I'll even like plug my nose or do it internally while I'm eating stuff, just to get the child to prefer something so that she has more options or he has more options, if you will. So I
Wow.
start already at that age because that's how passionate I am about food. I'm a foodie. I love food. And I want to make sure that carries on. I think food's great.
Yeah.
And so then when they are, also when I'm nursing, I eat things with a lot of spices because we do know it travels through the milk and herbs and, making sure obviously it's the right ones and not too spicy and causing issues with the child, if you will. But anyway, so that's something that I also do. And then starting at 4 months, I do avocado immediately. I always mix it with my breast milk or formula or a combination, whatever you want to do, but you can mix it and blend it so it's liquidy. And they don't do anything. They're 4 months old. They can hardly open their mouth. Not really, but but it just goes kind of all over their face. And I just do it day after day. And then by the time they're 5 months old, they're starting to consume it. And then 6 months, they're eating, like a boss, you could say. But I think that jumpstarts their diet. Even as of yesterday, I kind of wondered if I should regret that I do that. And I wonder this often because my children eat so much. They're like, geez, Louise, I'm still wondering. But I think it is ultimately a really good gift to give them. But all of my kids are voracious eaters. And generally, children are a little bit different where they should be. But that's one thing that I've consistently done. So I feel like that's probably a variable that plays a role, that it's not just because they have my genes or they love food. Like I feel like that's something that at least aids in that process. And I don't know why, I just never feel really good about giving oatmeal or wheat first, but I'm no doctor. And so I don't want to give any medical advice that I'm not licensed to. Ideologically, there's a lot of good fats in avocado and it's really good for you. So that's why I start with that. It helps with eye development, brain development, just the fats that are in there.
Right.
And then once they actually start eating, I mix in spices or seasonings that we're doing as an adult, and I'll like literally put it in a blender. So if I'm having rice and curry, I'll put that in a blender with formula and even maybe some water, a little bit less salt if I can, afford to it and have the time to separate it. And that way, right from the bat, they're eating stuff, even like red peppers, even though I would never eat red peppers, like liquidy, but they don't know any different because they're not meat. And so someone told me a long time ago, just because you don't prefer something, although I do like red peppers, maybe if I had them in that just because you don't like doesn't mean you should assume that your children don't. That's not fair for them. It's like a form of not racism, but a form of foodism or whatever. And it's robbing nutrients that they could be getting. And so I try to, when they're 9 months old, as usually when I start doing the red bells or those other things, mixing it with formula or whatever I have or breast milk, and then feeding it to them. And usually some like it, some don't. But I just put it in an ice cube tray and I freeze it. That way I can just have it to go. And the idea is just exposing it. So now to kind of answer your question for where they wanted me to focus, by the time they're 3 or 4 or 5, they've expressed to me, well, I don't prefer, we say prefer. I got it from some French book. I don't know. I didn't even read it. It just was a quote that a mom shared with me. Some really amazing French parenting book, but where we say I don't prefer versus I don't like, because maybe they don't prefer cabbage in a salad, but maybe they prefer cabbage soup. And so we don't just like X-nay cabbage. Let's just say I don't prefer cabbage this way, because that's years now in our home. And so by the time the child is 3 or 4, maybe they'll say to me, I don't prefer beets. And I'll generally tell them, I don't prefer them either. So just plug your nose, because our taste buds might not like them, but our body loves them and our body needs them. And it helps us be strong and beautiful from the inside out. So then they say, okay. So then they just pause and they eat. And some mamas may not prefer that method, or daddies, because they might think that I'm not for sure what they'll think. And that's okay. Each person's journey will be beneficial, but they're still tasting it no matter how well they're plugging their nose. And then what's cool is over the period of weeks or or even years, they start preferring it a little bit more at least, or they're giving it more of a chance. Even if you just put one on the plate, like literally one piece, for me it's a win because I'm planting seeds. So I'm okay if I don't see the harvest yet. It may not be till they're 8 or 9 or even 15. Like I've got myself to like spaghetti when I was little and tuna fish. I like tuna now. There's things that I've worked on that I thought was like cool or fun, and I would just make myself eat it, pickles, and now I like them. And so if it can happen for adults, it for sure can happen to children. And so that's just one of the methods that we use is, and it's okay if you like it, teaching them that we eat not for pleasure, but for survival and for health. So it's a different paradigm.
I love it. I love it. First of all, let me see. My son is 3. He just turned 3. So when he turned 3, my other son, who's about 5, I'll say about 5.5 years ago, I learned what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I did not know that before. Mm-hmm. I didn't know you could train. I call it training the palate in the womb. The society that I came from, it was all about, when you're pregnant, just eat whatever you want because you got to make yourself happy and that type of thing. Right. And I didn't know that was not really the power that a woman possesses, that God gave a woman when they are carrying a child, something that they have. I didn't know I had that. I didn't know I had some control, because when we're pregnant, we're made to, by some societies, feel, oh, you're not in control, so you just got to do whatever your emotions want or whatever you're craving. I didn't even know you could train your cravings. None of those things I didn't know. So when I found this out through a beautiful health community I'm a part of, I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, this is amazing. No one ever told me. I said, I was totally taught wrong. Yeah. And so I began to teach my children, even my boys and my girl. I teach them, hey, whoever you marry, whoever that this is going to be, this is what you need to do with your kids. And I said, remember what I told you about eating? And remember, one of my good friends, Dr. Sharon, she said, we don't eat for taste, we eat for our body. Like you were saying. So she said, if you keep doing it, if you keep eating it, your body prefers it. In other words, like you were saying. So I think what you're saying is right. Not some people will agree, some people won't. Doesn't matter. It's fact. Actually, it's not really about whether someone agrees or not. It's true. You really have this ability to do this. Right. And so the thing is, when we're carrying our children or raising our children, and we're placing on them, I'm gonna call it our habits that might be not so healthy or whatever. We created that, and with that comes problems sometimes that we've sometimes created. Now, everybody, there are things, unfortunately, that happen when children are born where they had no say over that. That happened to them, but the thing is, you do have some kind of control as to what you're giving them in their mouth, like what you're feeding them. And so I like what you're saying, because I don't feel like it's a one-sided view. I feel like it's an educational view. That's what I'm going to say, an educational view. And should anyone out there that feels helpless, if you feel helpless or you're like, I don't really understand what you're talking about, I'm sure that you could hit up either one of us, because I'm very familiar with what you're talking about as far as training your children's diets. And I love that. I never heard about the plug in the nose thing. That was, I just heard, you eat what I'm putting in front of you. But what I'll say about this is, the reason I don't particularly have a problem with what you said is because the things I'm hearing you tell your children to eat that they should prefer are actually healthy things. It's not like you're saying, eat this, no offense, like a burger that, you know what I'm saying, that is not going to really do their body that great. Yeah. You're saying, eat this, the lettuce, this beets, or whatever that you're saying to eat. So I commend you on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Love it.
And I feel like the plugging the nose makes the child feel heard, and it puts you next to your child versus against your child. So I love when they say, Mommy, I don't prefer this. I'm like, oh, I know I don't prefer it either, but my body's saying, yay, praise the Lord, or whatever. And I said, so we want to do what our spirit needs and not what our heart wants, because our heart is deceptive above all, and I tell them, close the issues of life. And so it's cool because you can use it as a time to disciple and to say, I know, sweet girl, I know where you're at, and I'm there too, and let's together do this together, because, and then we say things like together we're better, and so then you can move forward together with your health, and they don't feel alone, versus versus I have to do it by myself, and mom is this, and it doesn't, it removes the opportunity for like that. I don't know. Right. I can't think of the word, conflicting worldviews. I'm not for sure. And so I love coming along beside them, and let's do it. Ready? Everyone plug your nose. Even if you like it, let's plug your nose so we can help Selah. That's like my 4-year-old, or she's 5 now. But anyways, and it makes it more of a team thing, and like mama's on my side.
Wow, I love it. You need to write a book about this. Yeah. There's a lot of education I hear about this, but I just feel like your story would be different if you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, interestingly enough, a lot of stuff is inclinations that I believe the Holy Spirit has given me, and I'm just so confident with them that I'm sure if I Googled, I'd find the science or the data for it, or later it'll come across my path. But honestly, it's God being so true to his word when he says you don't need a teacher, you have the Holy Spirit. But I'm all about community. I'm all about seeking and reading and finding and looking. But sometimes for me, being overseas in a country where I'm just trying to learn the language so I can ask somebody for milk, it's been very helpful. I call them nudges. Nudges, or these ideas come to my mind, like, that's a really good idea, and I think that makes sense. And by faith, then, and it's all by faith. But then by faith, I'm like, Lord, I think that this is the proper way. Help guide it. Help guide this activity that I think might be helpful for our family. And then later, I'll read the science that backs it. And so it's just been a very fun journey for me. And then I feel like it's less oppressive when you're sharing it to someone else, because it's just my journey. If you don't prefer it, no worries. Yeah, this has just been really helpful for us. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I love your perspective, because it's not one-sided. You've traveled so many countries. And so you've done this several times, and it's proven to be successful. So I love it. All right. So the last question that I have for you're welcome for today is, you were kind of talking about the diet. You were talking about all those things. Tell us how your morals, the things that you believe in, how that all ties into what you're putting in your children's body.
Sure.
Or how you're raising
passionate view. Yeah. So I think that if someone can control their diet through the power of the Holy Spirit, because alone we can't. For me, sugar, we have an unhealthy relationship, sugar and I do, and I'm asking for God's help with that. But in other areas where I've been liberated or have freedom, I have found that if I can practice restraint at a really high level and control of my diet's not in control of me, then that discipline and focus transitions to other parts of my life. And so there's many proverbs on food, diet, drinking, but one of them is restraint is for kings, and it's probably a paraphrase, although there's so many translations. I'm sure you could Google it and something will come up, but it's somewhere in Proverbs where it says restraint is for kings. Basically, I wrote it, so it's my paraphrase of what I read in the section. But since then, it was maybe 5 years ago or so that came across my path. I preach it and teach it to the children, and I try my best to live it out as I'm doing it. But that we eat to be content, and that focuses and it overflows into other areas. As in, our car is great. It may not be a Maserati, but it's lovely, and it gets us from here to there. It's it's beautiful. As in, it doesn't need to be everything we need it to be. I don't need to eat until I'm 100% full. I don't need to eat food that tastes so like delicacies and whatever. But that whole entire way of diet, we translate it to also having modesty with the way that we dress. As in, just because I have it doesn't mean I show it, and so just because it's there doesn't mean I need to eat it, or just because they're offering dessert doesn't mean I have to have it. And so the same exact mindset with just because I need to spend it, or just because my friends are here doesn't mean I don't need to remember this young child that's sitting all by himself or by herself. And so I love food examples, because we eat food and we eat it at the table so much all the time, really, it seems, that we can translate it to practicing those same habits with someone else. And I say, guys, if we can control our diet here and eat till we're just content, not till we're full, then we go into whatever it is that we're talking about. And somehow, and almost always, there's a connection. Even selfish. And I talk about the friends. The more colorful your friends are, and I said it doesn't have to be skin. It can be the colors they choose. Maybe this friend wears pink all the time and lots of perfume and colors, and maybe this one's always in brown and green. That's good. We should have friends that represent a lot of things, so that we can be very strong and confident in how we feel, so that with love we can hear how they feel, but still be a strong tree that can be like shade to others, so that they can rest in our presence even if they don't feel the same way we feel. And so anyways, I know that that's a lot, and I'm trying to get it all in because of time, but those are some ways that our morals overflow into our life.
I love it. I'm gonna have to have you back another time, but I love it because I feel like you're raising mindful, conscious children who are not just
Mhm.
about themselves, but truly about others and about what God has called them to be. And so I can definitely get that from everything that you're
Amen.
saying and love your family. Shout outs to all of you. And
Mhm.
I loved having you on
Thank you.
today. And I loved your journey. And that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to share a different journey that maybe someone else didn't hear before, to encourage those who are raising families out there, that it is possible. Come on now. She didn't travel over 6 countries, she told y'all. So they definitely can do it. So definitely we'll have to have you back and talk more about this food, diet thing that you're doing with your kids. But I love what you're doing. And you have, and there's 7 of you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So mm, prayers up. All right. But God has graced her to do that. All right. So anybody, if you have any questions below, please post them
Amen.
below and I'm sure we'll go back through the comments. And you guys enjoy your lunch break on today. And we will talk to you soon.